Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today we're unpacking a story where a massive, incredibly messy geopolitical border crisis collides head-on with hyper-local edge artificial intelligence. We're looking at a completely fascinating intersection here. On one side, thousands of tons of construction waste, severe political gridlock, and some looming international trade tariffs that are frankly terrifying the industry. And on the other side, consumer smartphones, advanced AI running right at the edge, and the premium global market for carbon removals. I know it sounds a bit like science fiction, but this is happening right now, out in the real world.
To really grasp this, we have to start with the sheer, staggering scale of the physical problem. Right now, 3.46 million tons of municipal solid waste are shipped from Ontario, Canada, straight across the border to Michigan landfills every single year. Just try to picture that volume for a second. We're talking about a daily, relentless armada of heavy diesel trucks rumbling across the Ambassador Bridge and the Blue Water Bridge. It's essentially an endless conveyor belt of trash just constantly flowing from one country into another.
And because of that, the Michigan-Ontario corridor has become deeply codependent. Get this. Canadian trash makes up 14.35% of all waste disposed of in the entire state of Michigan. Think about that. Almost 15% of a U.S. state's entire landfill volume is just trucked right over the border from Canada. This isn't some minor logistical quirk we're talking about. This is a deeply entrenched, massive industrial dependency that the entire region's construction and waste sectors completely rely on just to function day in and day out.
Which brings us to Section 1, the physical crisis, landfills, tariffs, and a looming cliff.
Now, when you have a cross-border dependency this large, it really only takes a few policy shifts to trigger a massive crisis. We can track this escalating friction on a timeline. It starts with the 2020 Ontario bill that essentially gave municipalities a veto over new landfills, making it practically impossible to open domestic dump sites. Then, looking ahead to 2026, we see Donald Trump's Section 338 tariff proclamation severely escalating trade tensions. And all of this? It points toward a devastating 2037 capacity cliff where Doug Ford's Ontario simply runs out of physical landfill space entirely. So there's nowhere for the trash to go at home, and the border is getting wildly expensive. The absolute crucial point here is the U.S. Section 338 tariff. We're talking about an unprecedented 50% tariff hitting Canadian imports right in the middle of USMCA, or CUSMA, negotiations. This threatens to skyrocket the cost of dumping cross-border construction waste quite literally overnight. It's the invocation of a 1930s law to levy massive duties, and initially it offers zero exemptions for USMCA origination status. Imagine you're a general contractor in Ontario. Your waste disposal budget could double or triple without any warning whatsoever. The era of cheap, easy cross-border landfill dumping is slamming shut.
So, what's the solution? Let's move to Section 2, building the Sentient Bridge. How do you escape a geopolitical trap like that? Well, you change the very nature of the material itself. The contrast here is stark. On one side, you have chaotic negative cost construction waste that is fully exposed to those massive border tariffs. But on the other side, perfectly clean, pyrogenic biocarbon feedstock that can safely cross the border under a USMCA-exempt classification. The magic code here is HS3825.0. Under the wholly obtained doctrine of the USMCA, clean, characterized waste actually qualifies for preferential treatment. So if it's chaotic garbage, you pay massive tariffs. But if it's verified clean wood feedstock, it suddenly transforms into a valuable tariff-exempt asset. Bridging that gap means tapping into the highly lucrative Puro.Earth registry. For context, they are the world's leading durable carbon dioxide removal registry, with 118 certified projects and 1.8 million CO2 removal certificates, or CORCs, issued. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. They demand incredibly strict, high-purity provenance data to mint those credits. They absolutely do not want contaminated demolition debris. They want perfectly tracked, rulebook-conformant biocarbon feedstock. The global market is deep, and it's hungry for this, but the data requirements are absolute. This is where 905 Wood enters the picture. They act as this sentient bridge. They've built a digital refinery workflow that sits right in the middle of this logistical nightmare. It takes in chaotic, dirty physical waste and magically outputs the absolute verifiable data purity that the global carbon market will pay a massive premium for. It quite literally takes in physical chaos and outputs mathematical certainty.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, Edge AI on the ground.
So you're probably wondering, how do they actually achieve this strict data purity out in the dirt, the mud, and the chaos of an active construction site? I mean, you can't exactly strap a $1 million optical sorter onto every roll-off bin. The answer is absolutely wild. They are operationalizing a consumer smartphone, specifically the Google Pixel 11 Pro running Android 17. They're using the LiteRT AI stack directly at the garbage bin. It sounds almost absurd to use a pocket device for this level of heavy industrial compliance, but the architecture of the new Tensor G5 chip makes it entirely possible. They are running advanced Gemma mixture of experts models completely locally, right there in the truck.
By doing the heavy AI lifting right on the device, they turn cheap, everyday silicon into a sovereign, incredibly high-margin classification engine. Because it's on-device inference, there is zero cloud latency. There are no per-token API costs for routine classifications. And critically, all the data processing stays right on Canadian soil, which is an absolute must for regulatory sovereignty. The phone literally thinks at the edge, converting a physical load of waste into a verified mathematical certainty in about half a second.
Their Digital Refinery workflow is elegantly simple but insanely powerful. It tracks the entire process. It starts with an initial request for quote intake, flows straight through that on-device AI visual classification, triggers a cryptographic hold-to-seal attestation, and finally generates a pristine UI/UX output PDF. The tracking actually starts before the bin even arrives on the job site. This is a complete end-to-end software product, not just some theoretical tech demo.
And that hold-to-seal moment? It's paramount. It locks in the location and compliance data directly on the hardware to create a mathematically unfakeable ledger for the carbon registry. Using the Titan M2 security chip inside the Pixel, they package up the precise spatial coordinates down to the meter, the exact time, the classification metrics, and the model hashes. If the data says a load of wood is clean, that claim is instantly court-ready and fully audit defensible.
Let's wrap it up with Section 4, the data is the product. This is the ultimate paradigm shift of the entire operation. While managing physical trucks and steel bins obviously still carries real-world risks, this business is actually managed with software discipline. Why? Because its core product has fundamentally transformed. Yes, you still need the physical sensor network, the trucks, the bins, to acquire the raw material. But the risk profile shifts from being a traditional hauling company to being a pure data company. You're managing methodology drift and data quality now, rather than just worrying about flat tires and diesel costs. To quote their internal strategy directly, 95Wood's value shifts entirely to the DMRV provenance data cut. This SaaS application service is what actually secures Ontario's industrial leadership in the Canadian and global circular bioeconomy. I really want to reinforce this point. They aren't selling timber. The SaaS application service, the data, is the true value driver. They are selling the verified, digital measurement, reporting, and verification data that makes these high-value carbon credits possible in the first place.
The Digital Refinery application pumps out these beautifully formatted, verified compliance documents. You get the Certificate of Origin, the RPRA Hazardous Waste Manifest, and a digital product passport for ESG dashboards. Remember those brutal 50% Section 338 tariffs threatening the border we talked about? This Certificate of Origin is your literal armor against it. It proves to customs agents that this isn't taxable garbage, it's a wholly obtained premium resource. The physical material hasn't even moved an inch yet, but the valuable digital asset has already been minted.
If you take only one thing away from this explainer today, let it be this. The physical wood is merely how the data gets made. The cryptographically verified DMRV provenance data is what actually gets sold to the carbon market. The chaotic garbage bin is essentially just a customer acquisition tool for the SaaS platform. The wood is just the raw input necessary to generate that highly lucrative cryptographically signed data cut that a biochar producer needs to satisfy the strict rules of the Puro registry. The data, not just the wood, is the product.
So I'll leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought. If an AI stack running on a standard smartphone can turn a chaotic garbage bin into a premium carbon asset, what other physical supply chains are out there, right now, operating as dirty, physical businesses that are actually just data businesses waiting to be unlocked? We're looking at an absolute masterclass in algorithmic arbitrage here, turning a geopolitical waste crisis into a digital goldmine. It really makes you wonder what else is hiding in plain sight, doesn't it? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep looking for those invisible bridges.